Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I am Vishal Dahiya and today we will talk about the unregulated deposit schemes. Now, the banning of unregulated deposit schemes Bill 2019 was passed unanimously by the Rajya Sabha on Monday. Lok Sabha had given its nod to the bill last week. This bill aims to protect the investors from Ponzi schemes and tackle the menace of illicit deposit-taking activities which so far exploited regulatory gaps and lack of strict administrative measures to dupe poor and gullible people. The bill provides for severe punishment ranging from 1 year to 10 years and fines from 2 lakh to 50 crore rupees to act as a deterrent. It also has adequate provisions for disgorgement or repayment of deposits in cases where deposits have been raised illegally. The bill also says that the first claim on the recovered money will be that of the depositors. For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests in the studio today. Let me start by introducing them to you, beginning with Professor Aman Agarwal, the Director of Indian Institute of Finance. We also have with us Mr. K. Badrinath, Senior Journalist, and Mr. Nitin Desai, former Chief Economic Advisor of the Government of India. And we're also joined by Mr. Ashok Naga, the former advisor of RBI from Mumbai. Let me begin with you, Mr. Badrinath, and let's put the bill in perspective here. This bill seeks to go ahead and deal with all unregulated deposits, says it will ban all such activities and puts in place provisions to go ahead and safeguard the interest of the depositors specifically. What are the salient features?
See, the bill itself was, if you recall, was passed in the Lok Sabha in the earlier house also before the election.
In 2018.
Yes. And then it went to Rajya Sabha. Two things happened. One, the government did not have enough time to get it passed before the election. Second, it did not have enough numbers or muster numbers to get it passed. Two things happened. So the bill had to be postponed and reintroduced in Lok Sabha. This time it was passed and then it went to Rajya Sabha. With the changes that have been made in the bill, there has been a virtual consensus as to how this bill and what the unregulated deposit schemes, how they should be dealt with, all the fraudsters and things like that. One significant issue is that registration of all the deposit-taking, companies or the firms has with a central database is a big issue that will help. In managing, at least monitoring as to who is collecting deposits in this country. Even a small jeweler can take a deposit from you, promising you a jewel or an ornament after 48 months. So every month he takes about 6,000, 7,000, 5,000, whatever is the issue. Second, for example, chit funds. Chit funds take every month a contribution to promising very good return, and they come up after 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and that kind of stuff. When we talk about deposits, it's not just a bank deposit that you're talking about. You're talking about several things. So, for example, plantation companies. Plantation companies are regulated by the Securities Exchange Board of India, SEBI. And these plantation companies also take deposits. So, there are several players in the market.
Okay.
So, how do you keep them under check? And how do you see that the vulnerable depositors do not lose their hard-earned money is the biggest challenge.
Okay.
In this bill, what my guess is, all the deposit-taking companies will be brought under one umbrella. Though the regulation of these depositors itself seems to be done by different companies, different arms of the government. For example, corporate affairs does the company's part of it. Listed companies are regulated by the SEBI. The third is the other chit funds are done by the Chit Fund Act. For example, in South, you have the Madras Chit Fund Act, which does the regulation part of it. So there are several things in it. One key issue in this bill, as one might like to look at, is setting up of courts. If there are any issues, any depositor losing money, then that court will take quick action, and in 180 days you have to clear the entire process and see that the depositor gets his money back to whatever extent possible. And second big option or the big provision to my mind is that you can seize the properties and assets of the promoters of these companies to give the recovery, and the first charge.
First right will be
with that of the depositors.
Of the depositors only. That's quite right. Let me bring in Mr. Desai here. Mr. Desai, two aspects. One, how significant will this bill be? And two, what are the different mechanisms we have specifically in addition to this particular bill to deal with such schemes so far? Because the government itself said that these companies, these Ponzi scheme promoters, they used to exploit those gaps in the regulatory mechanisms.
Yes, I think one of the things the government will also have to look at is its own regulatory mechanism and the coherence of it. I'll give you one important point here. Basically, this bill, which is very desirable because we've had so many frauds, Ponzi scheme type frauds, it's about time we did something about it. But take, for instance, the whole business that the depositors claim has priority over all others. Now, one of the things they will have to reconcile this with is the provision in the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, where under Section 53 you basically say secured creditor has the first right, and technically a depositor is an unsecured creditor. So in that sense, if I'm a company which has taken deposits and I come under IBC, my depositors will actually have a claim after the claims of the secured creditors are resolved. Can I undo that? No, not that easily. Because if I undo that, then the whole business of raising loans by providing security becomes impossible. And the bank will say, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care if you're giving me collateral, but my rights on your assets, if something happens, are no different from that of an unsecured creditor. So I'm going to charge you an interest rate comparable to that. So they should really square up the provisions of the IBC and the provisions of this Act when it comes to the rights of depositors in companies which may come under the framework of the IBC. That is, I think, very important. The second point I would say is that I think much of this arises from the modality of operation of a lot of these funds. Many of them run on what I could call a trust basis. It will be like, the whole marketing is very different. It's not like a bank marketing deposits on the basis of the interest rate it offers, etc. There's a lot of personalized marketing which goes on, and the main thing is they're offering exceptionally high returns. I would be suspicious the minute anybody offers a return which is more than, let us say, a couple of 100 basis points above the normal return that you expect. If somebody offers me 15% return, I would immediately investigate as to what lies behind this. So there should be a certain monitoring of the offers that are being made. I don't think you can stop the purely informal things. I know, I'm sure, I don't know, I know the fellow who works in my house goes into a chit fund equivalent where they pay money. You can never stop that type of informal borrowing and lending which takes place, nor should we. We are not trying to control every transaction. But I think this is a good scheme, but the government should also now seriously address the reconciliation of the provisions under the IBC with the provisions under this when it comes to companies which are IBC.
Professor Agarwal, your point on that, as is pointing out that, reconciliation between the provisions of IBC and provisions of this Act also it needs to be done.
You see, the reconciliation is important. It's a question of implementation, which he is also trying to point out. It's enforcing the Act is important, and that's where you need different agencies of the government to come together. Fortunately, this Act actually, for the first time, covers every kind of deposit. When I was going through the Act, it carries from an individual to a large corporation. So you're looking at not only chit funds, because chit funds are popular because of the large, and there was a Chit Fund Act also in terms of forbidding chit funds. But even then we have that. It even restricts any kind of deposits, small in nature or big. Like even if you see in large part of this country, there is a functionality of something called committees, which takes place on an informal manner, where about a 5, 6, 7, 8 group member goes in. Women in kitties, they go about doing certain kind of deposit schemes. Now, all those schemes get actually covered in this, and these are all punishable events now. So anyone who is taking those kind of deposits, whether it's an individual or it's a small corporation or it's a partnership firm or it's a large listed company or non-listed company, irrespective of the nature, all of them have been taken into account for the first time, and there is a punishable expense trying to protect the depositor. The important thing here is when it comes to a fraud, a person is unable to reclaim his money which he has deposited, and many a times in these informal schemes this is what happens, because
most of these are poor people,
and most of these are even common general people.
The common general people as well.
We have also seen many a times even richer people have got into those kind of schemes. They never come forward because they don't want to get into the list of getting, but there are such schemes which exist where even richer people have been found to be involved and keeping their deposits and keeping money and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So any of such deposit scheme, whether it is related to jewelry, whether it is related to groceries, whether it is related to any other activity, you see the provision of the deposits can be made in 3 categories, which is very clearly outlined by the law. One is by the banks. So you go and make a deposit in the bank, whether savings account or fixed deposit or long term or short term. The second component with is NBFCs, where the NBFCs have been given right to raise deposits for the functionality of NBFC functionality. The third is even with the companies, listed or unlisted companies, they can go to about 25% of savings as deposits can be taken of the total net worth, and 10% from the public at large, and 10% can be taken from their shareholders. A total about 35% of their net worth can be raised in terms of deposits. So many a times even companies who violate this rule of going beyond this, which is regulated by the Company Law Board, will fall in this category as well.
Okay.
So despite the fact that they have the provision, they have the right, but if they violate the regulation, the rest of the other, whether it is NBFC or the banks, are regulated by the RBI.
Okay.
So this is very clearly now done that, and any other which was deposit was being taken, there was no regulatory body per se.
So more clarity
this
on
now
these aspects.
Gives that mandate that there is a law which prohibits you taking or I taking deposit from you on a pretext of trying to give you some kind of a reward tomorrow.
Wrongful inducement.
Wrongful inducement, and it could be whether it is investing in legitimate sources of business or illegitimate sources of business, but where I am promising you something where I do not have the right to take that deposit, and that's where even an individual has been taken into account for the first time, specifically keeping in mind that we saw a large number of small business houses, small shopkeepers raising money, like jewelers had started doing it, large number of other companies are to manage their working capital by taking such deposits and then disappearing in due course, which was making a big loss to people at large, whether it was educated or uneducated both.
Okay.
And that's where the government has come out, and from that perspective I feel this bill is very critical and important to bring in some kind of order to the house.
Okay, so clearly it protects the interests of the investors, specifically the poor and gullible. To that aspect, Mr. Padmanabhan, as Mr. Desai was pointing out, that he would be a little skeptical if somebody is offering, an interest more than say 100 basis point, as he pointed out, somewhere around 15% or so. But then that's him. For others, do you also think that a sort of awareness program, or maybe making people more aware, making the investors more aware, the depositors more aware that, see, these might be the wrongful, schemes, wrongful inducements?
There are 2 aspects to this, Vishalji. One is exercising caution on oneself. Like Mr. Desai says that, okay, if someone gives me more than 12 to 14%, then I would be surprised. What the hell is this? The same way, there is an issue of, say for example, you have multiple, regulators controlling different aspects of the deposits. Now, multiple agencies, is there a coordination between these agencies? For example, state agencies are also there. Second is you have the SEBI. You have the Corporate Affairs Ministry. You have the banks which fall under the Reserve Bank of India. So, where is the coordination between different agencies? Is there a mechanism, inter-agency mechanism, which will allow them to exchange information, allow them to exchange who is doing what in different states or districts, especially when you go down to the districts and below? The issues will be huge. Many a time the depositors would put in his hard-earned money just because of the trust. And many a time, if you are the same village, same district, what happens at the lower level? We know him very well. Why not we keep money with him? That kind of stuff.
Okay.
So what happens is, now that could be misused. That could be misused. Or you would have given it to someone in good intent and he has not returned it. And you do not have the fallback arrangement to clear off all the depositors.
Okay.
Second is the fraudulent intent with which many of the companies are coming together to put together these deposit schemes, giving you huge returns and things like that. Even, real estate schemes where they offer you so many things. Just give me so much and I'll give you a huge, car, or I will give you a flat, a 4-bedroom.
These two aspects are definitely, clearly taken care of by the bill, because the aim of the bill, the first para itself clearly states that, it'll cover fraudulent deposits in these schemes and wrongful inducement as well.
I think basically one needs some certain, just as in the case of a share offering now, you have to follow certain norms in the offer in terms of risk, etc. Some standards are laid down. I think they will, the authority and the competent authority that they will set up will have to formulate clearer regulations on the minimum information you must give a depositor before you seek a person's deposits, besides the registration, etc., etc. The essential point here is that when people take deposits without a proper business to use it in, when most of the time, what's a Ponzi scheme? The man actually doesn't have a business. He's taking your money and then using the next person's money to pay you interest.
And that's what Mr. Ponzi used to do, on whose name this has been
classic
named.
Ponzi scheme. It also is like a pyramid scheme. What happens is, a lot of these guys, what they do is, आपको हमने इतना दे दो, अगर आप 3 और ले आओगे तो आपको इतना additional concession मिलेगा. They make the depositor part of the conspiracy in this form. Sometimes it's done with money, sometimes it is done with objects. This gold coin, आपको ले लो, अगर आप दूसरे 3 लोग को लाओगे तो ये concession आपको मिलेगा. That type of thing. So I think basically scrutiny is required. Look, this is an open country, this is a free country. You will never be able to stop fraud completely. But what you can do is to make sure it does not happen because of regulatory lacuna. So
that is what this bill seeks to address.
Bill is welcome, and that is why it has received universal support. There's been no opposition to the bill as far as I know. I'm not sure. Not that I know of. And so and why? It has received that support because of this.
You see, one important component here is also the fact that we are now seeing the emergence of large number of digital wallets. So most of these marketplaces which have been created online are now actually creating deposits, because you buy a thing and you sell and you return the thing and the money goes into this wallet. Now, do these agencies or organizations have right actually to take these deposits or not? Most of us are not aware about these facts. Are they authorized by RBI or any other agents to take these deposits? Is also not clear. There is no nomenclature, there is no structure. And any of these wallets or any of these online sale portals can actually go bust any day, and tomorrow your money can be lost and there is nowhere you can actually approach, because you don't have a document, you don't have an account number, and you do not know exactly. And most of these companies don't even put their offices, numbers or addresses on their websites. So there is no way to actually go about reaching the company or any other alternative means or mechanism to actually take my deposit back. So keeping the fact that we are going digital and everything is going so digital now, it's important that this particular law brings in and brings a restriction to even
data
these data depository and structures where your money gets stored without your knowledge, and maybe because of your transactional framework. And that's where I think it's an important framework as well.
In fact, I'll come to you, Mr. Badrinath, but we are also joined by Mr. Ashok Naga, former advisor to RBI from Mumbai, on Skype with us. Mr. Naga, we're talking about the banning of unregulated deposit schemes Bill 2019, which has been passed unanimously by the upper house today, and it was passed last week by the lower house as well. 2 questions. One, the significance of this bill, how will it help? And second is, all the panelists here are pointing towards the regulatory mechanism, a need for all these, regulatory bodies to coordinate in a much better way. What are your views on that?
See, this particular bill is very welcome, no doubt about that. But similar bills, similar acts are there. For example, Maharashtra MPID Act is there. And it is important that we understand the experience that we have gained by application of the MPID Act and other acts. The point is that the what the particular act bill says, similar to the MPID, that there should be a competent authority and attachment of your properties of the deposit takers. But look at example like a Speak Asia. Speak Asia thing happened 2011. If you look at 2018, you will also see that many investors say that they have got not a single money. Point is that when the attachment happens, you can get a decree, but execution of decree and getting the property, selling the and recovered money is a very, very cumbersome process in India.
Okay.
I don't think the bill addresses those issues which are there. Second point is that somebody has told that what is happening in the online state. The bill says that a appropriate government, which is state. Now, if you have a multi-state scheme like Ponzi scheme, which are happening in other things, which states will follow? Which state will give the competent authority when your assets out of the deposits are scattered across even India or outside India? What is the mechanisms which you will be doing for actually recover the money is important, because ultimately depositor has to get the money back. Okay, the person, many people have been arrested, then they get a bail or not bail. But point is that ultimate proof of the pudding will be the depositors getting back the money in due course, which does not happen so easily in most of the cases, because attached property purchase in India, for example, even Kingfisher's property in the heart of the Bombay near the airport, SBI could not sell it. So these are the issues which needs to be addressed if we really want to protect the interest of the depositors. Otherwise, intention of the bill is absolutely no doubt about it, but the details, devils lies in the implementation details.
Okay.
How the implementation will be much better, much efficient, that is not very clear to me how the bill addresses those issues.
Okay, again, we back to the same point, as in, when you implement a bill like this with all these provisions, and there are deterrents, in terms of punishment, be it the prison term or be it the fine as well. But Mr. Badrinath, the coordination and the implementation, these are the two important aspects. But if you look at what the bill seeks to do, that seems to be, as Mr. Desai was pointing out, we will have to take that one step to ensure that these things are controlled in one way or the other.
Yes, that is one thing. Second is, like you have the provision for registration of all the deposit taking companies. The same way, can we have a provision on the end use of deposits that has been taken? Say, for example, I have said, okay, I will be taking these deposits because I want to do some business. In some cases, there is no business at all. But if I have declared a business and I'm using these money for some particular business that I'm going to do, who is going to monitor as to whether this money is being used properly for that or not, or diverted somewhere else? So this is an issue that needs to be still addressed, perhaps, as per my view. And second part is, you have a lot of, like Aman was saying, there are a lot of deposit taking companies which do online marketing of deposits, computer-based telemarketing of this deposit. You don't even know which company you're investing in. One is, you have to exercise your own caution because it's your own earned, hard-earned money. But the point here is, if someone on the online internet takes deposit from you, and after that, what happens?
That is what the bill's provision of, having that data of depositors, as Professor Aman was also pointing out, that, that will take care of that aspect.
What an important point Aman has raised is, there are, so to speak, involuntary deposits. That is what he's saying. The wallets. That is, some money is due back to me. Ye to hum wallet mein dal dete hain. Now, I never put a deposit with that gentleman. No, but it's an involuntary deposit almost, So I'd say that that's an interesting point. I'm not sure the Act covers that. I'm not at all sure the Act covers that. But what I would say, getting back, I want to repeat the point I made at the beginning. I think they will have to look at the IBC also, because the IBC is very clear, secured creditors have priority over all others. And if that is the case, then the depositors in a company which is under IBC will not get the benefit of this Act, which is that their claim has priority over others. Incidentally, there's a section 12 in the bill which actually says that this right is subject to what is said under the IBC and so on.
Okay.
So that qualification is there. Similarly, in the IBC section 53, there'll have to be a call. But whatever it is, those are issues which will have to be resolved. The bottom line is that there are a whole class of things which are not IBC type things, but straightforward Ponzi type schemes will be controlled by these.
They will be taken care of.
Yes, but I think there are intermediate categories which may fall a little between stools unless we get our regulatory act together. If I had to give anything, give priority to the creation of a truly competent authority. As competent, I hope people will, that at least like SEBI, it develops a certain knowledge, a standing, which
and
allows
mechanism.
And a mechanism which allows it to really regulate this business.
Okay. Professor Agarwal, final comments from you.
You see, taking from what Mr. Desai also and Mr. Nag said, it is important that last week when we saw the IBC code amendment being introduced, so our finance minister has very clearly, she has pointed out that within 330 days you need to resolve the thing, including the legal battles. So there is a move by this government to actually bring the framework in so that they can be resolved, and whether it is secured plus then unsecured or whichever way, but at least there is now a hope that within a framework it is going to happen. I think it's a very critical thing which has happened, keeping that large amount of money in this country is not kept in banks, and it is not kept with large number of people, but with the small depositors, and they have never been looked apart by the government in the past. This particular bill and the act henceforth would actually give them some surety of their money, whichever way they deposit in, at least a relief to them that they can go now to an authority or an agency or a law enforcement body to actually recover their money, which they could not do before because there was no such act or bill existing in this country before.
And there was no such option for them. So clearly, as our panelists are pointing out, this bill which has been passed by the upper house today, that is the banning of unregulatory deposit scheme 2019. This particular bill seeks to go ahead and tackle the menace of unregulated deposit schemes and also protect the interests of investors, specifically the gullible investors, those who are wrongfully induced by the deposit takers to deposit in their schemes. We'll keep a tab on how this bill is implemented, what kind of rules are framed, and we'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic and a different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.